BBC News with Sue Montgomery. President Biden has said he's prepared to impose sanctions on his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, directly if Moscow invades Ukraine. It's the first time that Western powers have suggested that the extra measures they've threatened against Moscow could go right to the top of the Kremlin. Here's our Washington correspondent, Barbara Platusher.
President Biden was responding to a reporter's question about whether he'd consider personally sanctioning Mr. Putin if Russia invaded Ukraine. Yes, he replied, without elaborating. Administration officials have not previously mentioned such a step when outlining what they say would be severe consequences. Today, they told reporters they were looking at blocking exports of American-made technology that would significantly hinder the development of key sectors of the Russian economy. The U.S. has also put more than 8,000 troops on alert for a possible deployment to Eastern Europe.
The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said he's willing to speak to police officers investigating whether a number of events in Downing Street broke COVID lockdown rules. The head of London's Metropolitan Police said the investigation had been opened because of information from a civil service inquiry, as well as police assessments. Our political editor, Laura Kunsberg, says news of the investigation is a serious development.
Well, earlier today there were some backers of Boris Johnson who felt, well, perhaps this might slow down what has been a terrible crescendo for Number 10. In actual fact, the optics of police being involved in this are deeply, deeply serious. And then when it comes to the official inquiry that will be the civil service verdict on everything that went on behind closed doors during lockdown, well, I'm told that the report is complete, and I'm also told that it will not be easy reading.
Kurdish forces in northeast Syria say they expect to win control of more sections of a prison where Islamic State fighters have tried to mount a takeover and mass breakout. There have been fierce clashes since IS overran the jail in Hasaka last Thursday. Here's Anna Foster.
Despite local military personnel pouring into the area and the backing of US fighter jets, the siege is still going on. Hundreds of fighters have surrendered after being given guarantees about their safety. The Syrian Democratic Forces insist that they have contained most of what they call an exceptional situation. But aid organisations say around 800 boys who were being detained in the jail are now being used as human shields. They've made fresh calls for those vulnerable children to finally be repatriated by their home nations.
The International Monetary Fund says the global economy is set to grow more slowly than previously forecast this year. It blamed the downgraded prediction on the lingering pandemic and stubbornly high inflation. It highlighted slowdowns in the US and China. BBC News. The US automotive giant General Motors says it's making the biggest single investment in its history, pumping $7 billion into its home state of Michigan as it ramps up the production of electric vehicles. It says the move will create 4,000 new jobs and help produce more than 600,000 electric trucks in Michigan over the next 3 years. The Netherlands has announced that further facilities will reopen on Wednesday, having been closed since mid-December because of coronavirus. Recent weeks have seen record infection rates, but the Omicron wave has seen fewer hospital admissions than had been feared. Here's Anna Holligan.
Cafes, bars, museums and theatres can allow people back inside, but certain conditions will apply. Visitors will need to prove they've recently recovered from, tested negative for or been vaccinated against the virus, and venues will only be open till 10 p.m. Spectators will be allowed to watch sports games in stadiums again, and music events can go ahead, but at reduced capacity. The quarantine rules for children, which have seen whole year groups sent home when a few classmates test positive, will be eased.
The US Coast Guard says it's looking for 39 people missing after a boat reportedly capsized off Florida. The accident occurred on Saturday, but a survivor was rescued on Tuesday. He said the vessel had run into bad weather. All 4 teams playing in Tuesday's games at the Africa Cup of Nations football tournament have observed minutes of silence for the 8 people who died in a stampede before a match on Monday. The Confederation of African Football said no more matches would be played at the stadium in Yaoundé, where the final had been scheduled. On the pitch, Senegal beat Cape Verde 2-0 to book their ticket to the quarter-finals, as did Morocco, who came from behind to beat Malawi. BBC News.